The billionaire CEO noticed a mark on his secretary's neck and realized jealousy was breaking his control. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. And now, let's return to the main character. Ethan Cole arrives at the 42nd floor just before 8. The city still shaking sleep from its shoulders, glass towers catching the pale morning like a held breath, and control is the first thing he tastes with his coffee. Control over the calendar, control over the numbers, control over himself. Because that is how Ethan has built everything that carries his name, one deliberate decision at a time, no excess, no spillover, no surprises, until Lily Harper steps into his office with a tablet tucked to her chest, and the day changes by less than an inch, by less than a second, by a mark he did not expect to see and cannot unsee. A faint shadow just above her collar, nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Only a quiet interruption that presses against his focus like a thumb on glass, and he hates that his eyes return to it, hates that his pulse responds before his reason does, hates that his mind begins assembling stories without permission, because Lily is his secretary, because Lily is professional, because Lily is the person who never crosses lines and never invites questions, because Lily has always been a constant he could rely on the way he relies on gravity and contracts and the steady hum of the building's HVAC system. And yet here he is, measuring his breath, noticing how the room seems smaller, noticing how the air has shifted, noticing that his voice sounds different when he says good morning, lower, tighter, as if it needs to be restrained. Lily reads out the schedule with the same calm precision she always has. Earnings call at 10, board check-in at noon, a dinner he will not attend because it is unnecessary, and Ethan nods, corrects a time, adjusts a priority, all muscle memory, all practiced ease, but the mark sits there like a punctuation he did not place. A comma in a sentence he thought he had finished writing, and the longer he listens the more he realizes he is not listening at all. He is watching the way she stands, the way she keeps her shoulders square, the way she does not fidget, the way she does not ask for anything that is not earned. And this is when the truth presses in, not as a confession but as a question he refuses to answer. When did this begin? When did concern turn into something else? When did awareness sharpen into possession? And why does the idea that Lily's life exists beyond these walls feel like a threat to the structure he has built so carefully? He clears his throat, asks a neutral question, receives a neutral answer, and tells himself this is nothing. Tells himself he is imagining patterns because the human mind looks for them. Tells himself that leadership requires distance, and that distance is safety. But the body does not listen to speeches, and the heart does not read memos. And jealousy, he realizes with a quiet shock, is not loud at first, it is precise. It is rationalized. It is disguised as concern and efficiency and standards. It is the urge to know without asking and to protect without permission. And the realization unsettles him because it suggests a crack in the one thing he has always trusted, his control. Lily finishes, thanks him, turns to leave, and for a moment Ethan considers saying something. Anything. Then he does what he has always done. He says nothing, because silence has always been his strongest tool, because restraint has always been his advantage, because he believes that feelings fade if you starve them. And as the door closes, he tells himself the day will proceed as planned, that the city will move, that numbers will align, that this mark means nothing at all, and yet the thought lingers, thin and persistent, that control is not slipping because of weakness but because of attachment. And that realization, more than the mark itself, is what truly unsettles him. Ethan spends the rest of the morning doing what he does best, moving through decisions with precision, but the mark follows him like a ghost reflection on glass, appearing when he does not want it to and vanishing the moment he tries to confront it, and by the time the earnings call ends he realizes something has shifted, not in the numbers, which are strong, but in him, because he keeps listening for Lily's footsteps outside the door, keeps checking the clock for reasons to call her back in, keeps inventing justifications that sound professional enough to pass his own internal review. He tells himself this is about efficiency, about alignment. about making sure the day runs smoothly. Yet when Lily returns with a folder and stands at a careful distance from his desk, he notices how deliberately she keeps her collar in place, how her expression is composed but tired, how there is a restraint in her posture that feels new. And it irritates him that he cannot tell whether that restraint is for him or for something else entirely. He asks about lunch plans under the guise of scheduling, receives a simple answer about a quick meal at her desk, and nods as if this information matters when it should not, when none of it should, because he has never needed to know where his staff eats or who they text or what their evenings look like. The realization lands quietly that jealousy is not always loud or reckless. Sometimes it is polite. Sometimes it dresses itself as concern. Sometimes it asks questions it has no right to ask, and the fact that he recognizes it does not make it easier to ignore. By mid-afternoon, he finds himself rewriting an email twice, then a third time, then deleting it altogether, because the words feel wrong and the tone feels exposed. And when Lily steps in to clarify a detail, he interrupts her without meaning to, then immediately apologizes, a word he rarely uses at work, and the surprise on her face stays with him longer than the mistake itself. She says it is fine, that she understands, that the week has been intense, and there is no accusation in her voice, only a steadiness that makes him feel smaller than he likes to feel. As she leaves again, Ethan leans back and stares at the ceiling, measuring the distance between floors, between people, between who he is and who he insists on being, and for the first time in years the structure he trusts feels rigid instead of strong. He remembers the rule he set. The day Lily was hired, no personal entanglements, no blurred lines, no emotional debts, and he remembers how easily she accepted it, how she never pushed, never hinted, never asked for more than the role required. And the irony stings because it is precisely that discipline that has made her indispensable, not just to the company but to his days, his rhythm, his sense of order. When the workday winds down and the city outside glows amber with late light, he watches Lily gather her things and hesitate at the door as if deciding whether to say something, then choose silence, and the choice unsettles him because he understands it too well. After she leaves, the office feels emptier than it should, and Ethan stands by the window counting the lanes of traffic below, thinking about control and the stories he tells himself to maintain it, thinking about how easily it fractures when faced with the possibility that someone important to him has a life he does not touch. He tells himself he will let this pass, that tomorrow will reset the balance, that curiosity is not commitment and concern is not confession. But as he shuts off the lights and reaches for his coat, he knows the truth he has been avoiding, that the problem is not the mark on Lily's neck. It is the mark this realization has left on him, and it is not fading. Ethan does not sleep well that night, not because of work or markets or the familiar weight of responsibility, but because his mind keeps circling the same thought with a patience that feels cruel. The realization that Lily has become a variable in a system he once believed was sealed, and when morning comes he is already awake, already dressed, already replaying moments that meant nothing at the time and now feel charged with significance. The way she hands him his coffee exactly the way he likes it without asking. The way she anticipates problems before they form. The way her presence has quietly stabilized days that would otherwise fracture under pressure. At the office, the rhythm resumes, phones ringing, screens lighting up, assistants moving with purpose, and Ethan tells himself that yesterday was an anomaly, a lapse he will correct by returning to distance, by reinforcing structure, by behaving like the leader everyone expects him to be. But when Lily walks in and offers a brief update on overnight developments, he notices something else. The mark has faded slightly, not gone but softer, and the relief he feels is immediate and unwelcome, because it confirms what he has been trying to deny, that his emotions are reacting independently of his principles. He keeps his responses measured, his tone even, yet the effort it takes surprises him, like holding a door against a rising wind. Throughout the morning, he assigns tasks he could have handled himself, requests data he does not urgently need, anything to justify her presence in his office, and each time she complies without question, without complaint, with the same quiet competence that has always defined her, and the contrast between her professionalism and his internal unrest sharpens his discomfort. During a brief pause between meetings, Lily mentions she may need to leave a little early later in the week due to a family obligation, her voice careful, respectful, offering context without apology, and Ethan feels an instinctive urge to ask more, to understand the shape of that obligation, then stops himself mid-thought, aware that this is precisely the line he cannot cross. He approves the request with a nod and a neutral response, then spends the next hour questioning why it mattered at all. By afternoon, tension settles into his shoulders, not the productive kind that fuels decisions, but the quieter kind that erodes focus. And when he catches his reflection in the glass, he sees not the composed executive the world recognizes, but a man unsettled by the possibility of loss he has not earned the right to fear. The realization deepens when he overhears laughter from down the hall, Lily speaking with a colleague, her tone lighter than it ever is with him, and the sound triggers a sharp, irrational sense of exclusion, not from her life, but from the version of himself he thought was immune to this kind of vulnerability. He turns back to his desk, grounding himself in numbers, reminding himself that leadership demands restraint, that influence is most powerful when it is invisible, yet the logic feels thinner than it used to, more like a script than a truth. As the day winds down, Lily delivers the final briefing and pauses, as if sensing something unspoken, then meets his eyes briefly, a look that holds respect and curiosity, but also distance, and that distance hurts in a way he cannot categorize. After she leaves, Ethan remains seated, the office quiet, the city beginning its evening hum below, and he understands with startling clarity that the danger is not that he might want more than he should, but that wanting has already begun to change him, to loosen the grip he has always relied on, and for the first time he wonders whether control, the very thing he built his life around, has been less a shield and more a cage, one he may no longer want to stay inside. Ethan wakes to a message summary glowing on his phone and deletes it without reading, choosing instead to sit at the edge of the bed and listen to the city breathe, because something inside him has shifted from vigilance to reckoning, and he knows that pretending otherwise will only tighten the knot he has been carrying for days. At the office, the morning unfolds with deceptive normalcy, the same greetings, the same quiet efficiency, but he has made a decision he does not yet name, only feels as a steady resolve to stop circling and start understanding. When Lily arrives with her notes, he thanks her and asks if she has a moment later to review priorities for the week, a reasonable request that carries a different weight for him because it implies conversation rather than instruction. She agrees with a small nod, professional as ever, and the familiarity of her response steadies him even as it underscores the distance he has helped create. Hours later, when the window between meetings opens, he invites her to sit, not across the desk, but in the chair to the side where discussions tend to be collaborative, and the choice feels intentional, symbolic, a subtle reconfiguration of space that he hopes will signal respect rather than authority. He asks about workload, about what could be delegated, about how the pace has been affecting her, and Lily answers honestly but carefully, acknowledging pressure without complaint, pride without arrogance, and the balance she maintains impresses him in a new way, not as an asset, but as a person navigating responsibility with grace. As they talk, he notices how the mark has nearly disappeared, and with it the urgency that first unsettled him, replaced now by a quieter curiosity that feels safer and more sincere. When there is a pause, Ethan considers asking about her family obligation, then stops, recognizing that the boundary matters precisely because it is chosen, not forced, and he respects Lily too much to make curiosity feel like entitlement. Instead, he shares something unexpected, that the week has been demanding even by his standards, that leadership can feel isolating despite the constant presence of people, and the admission surprises them both, because it is not weakness but transparency, and Lily listens without interrupting, her expression open, attentive, human. She responds not with advice, but with understanding, noting that pressure often distorts perspective, that even the most capable people need room to recalibrate, and her words land gently, without judgment, without expectation. The conversation ends with mutual clarity rather than resolution, and as Lily returns to her work, Ethan feels a subtle release, not of feeling but of tension, as if acknowledging the truth has loosened its grip. Later that afternoon, he observes her from a distance, the ease with which she coordinates details, the quiet authority she carries without needing to assert it. And he understands that what unsettles him is not the fear of losing control over her, but the fear of confronting parts of himself he has long compartmentalized. As evening approaches, Ethan sends a brief message approving Lily's early departure later in the week with a simple note wishing her family well, no questions attached, no implications hidden, and when she replies with a thank you that includes a genuine smile in the tone, he feels something settle into place. Standing by the window as the sun dips behind the skyline, he reflects on the difference between possession and presence, between control and care, and realizes that the path forward does not require him to retreat or to advance recklessly, only to remain honest with himself and respectful of her autonomy. The day ends without drama, without declarations, yet Ethan knows it marks a turning point, because for the first time he has chosen understanding over assumption, and in doing so, he has begun to reclaim a sense of control that is grounded not in fear, but in trust. Ethan expects the equilibrium he found to hold, but the following days test it in quieter ways, through small absences and subtle shifts that draw his attention despite his resolve to remain measured. And when Lily leaves early on Thursday as planned, the office feels off balance, not inefficient, just missing a note he has grown accustomed to hearing. He tells himself this awareness is natural, that leaders notice patterns, that absence sharpens perception. Yet the truth is simpler and harder. He misses her, not as a function but as a presence, and acknowledging that does not weaken him as much as he feared it might. The next morning, Lily returns composed and focused, thanks him again for the flexibility, and offers no explanation beyond what is necessary, and Ethan respects that restraint even as he wonders what kind of care demands such quiet strength. Over the course of the day, their exchanges remain professional, but something warmer threads through them, an ease born of mutual respect rather than assumption, and Ethan notices how his questions have changed, fewer probes, more listening, fewer attempts to manage outcomes, more willingness to let moments unfold without interference. During a late afternoon briefing, Lily mentions a scheduling conflict with an external partner that could affect a long-planned presentation, and instead of issuing a directive, Ethan asks her opinion, then follows it, and the trust implicit in that choice settles comfortably between them. As the week closes, the board requests a last-minute strategy session, one that will run long, and Ethan hesitates before asking Lily to stay, careful to frame it as a request, not an expectation, and when she agrees, he thanks her sincerely, noticing how the words come easily now, without calculation. The meeting stretches into evening, the city lights deepening to blue and gold, and when it finally ends, the building is quieter, the halls emptied of urgency, leaving behind a calm that feels earned. Lily gathers her things and pauses, then mentions that the hospital called earlier with an update about her brother, a brief sentence offered without drama, and Ethan listens, his response simple and supportive, offering flexibility without prying, and Lily's nod carries gratitude that feels unburdened by obligation. As they walk toward the elevators together, the space between them feels different, not charged, not tense, just honest, and Ethan realizes that this is what he has been missing, not control but connection that does not demand ownership. The elevator descends in silence, comfortable rather than awkward, and when the doors open, Ethan makes a choice that surprises him with its clarity. He wishes her a safe night and tells her he is glad her brother is improving. Nothing more, nothing implied, and Lily smiles, a real smile that reaches her eyes, before stepping out into the evening. Alone again, Ethan lingers, considering how easily jealousy had crept in when information was absent and fear filled the gap, and how transparency, even partial, has eased that impulse without requiring disclosure or sacrifice. Over the weekend, he takes a step he has avoided for years. He disconnects, walks along the river, measures his pace by breath rather than deadlines, and thinks about leadership not as command but as stewardship, of people, of trust, of his own emotional integrity. By Monday, when Lily greets him with her usual efficiency, there is no mark to distract him, no imagined narrative to unravel, only a steady awareness that care does not need to control to be real. As the day unfolds, Ethan understands that the discipline he values most is not suppression but discernment, the ability to recognize emotion without letting it dictate behavior. and that jealousy, once named and examined, has lost its power. He ends the day confident not because he has mastered every variable, but because he has learned to release the need to, and in that release, he feels more grounded than he has in a long time, certain that whatever unfolds next will be guided not by fear of losing control, but by respect, honesty, and the quiet strength of choosing trust. Ethan notices the change first in the smallest details, in how Lily moves through the office with the same competence, but a lighter step, in how their conversations no longer circle tension, but flow with a quiet ease. And he tells himself this is what balance looks like when it is earned rather than enforced. The company prepares for a public charity gala tied to a major initiative, an event Ethan usually treats as an obligation rather than a moment. But this time he finds himself more engaged, asking Lily for her thoughts on seating arrangements, on which partners might appreciate discretion over display, and he listens carefully when she suggests small adjustments that prioritize people over optics. As plans take shape, a familiar pressure returns in a different form, not jealousy, but exposure, because the gala will bring his private restraint into a public space, and he knows that how he behaves will be watched, interpreted, and remembered. On the evening of the event, the venue glows with warm light, conversations overlapping like currents, and Ethan arrives composed, greeting guests with practiced ease. Yet his attention keeps returning to Lily, elegant but understated, her professionalism intact, her presence steady at his side without claiming it. He reminds himself that leadership in public demands clarity, that ambiguity can invite misinterpretation, and he resolves to remain consistent with the respect he has cultivated in private. As the evening unfolds, an unexpected moment tests that resolve when a guest makes a careless remark that skirts the line of familiarity toward Lily, not overtly inappropriate, but dismissive enough to register, and Ethan feels the old impulse flare, the urge to assert control, to intervene sharply, to reclaim authority through dominance. He pauses, breath measured, and chooses another path, redirecting the conversation calmly, acknowledging Lily's role with genuine credit, reinforcing her agency, without speaking over her, and the moment passes without spectacle, leaving behind something stronger than correction, a quiet affirmation of respect. Lily meets his eyes briefly, gratitude and trust reflected there, and the exchange settles something inside him that words never could. Later, during a brief lull, Lily mentions she will step outside for air, and Ethan nods, watching her go with an awareness that feels grounded rather than possessive. When he joins her a few minutes later, it is not to supervise or to follow, but simply to share the quiet, the city stretching out below them, lights steady, distant, reassuring. They speak about the event, about how visibility can amplify both good intentions and careless mistakes, and Lily remarks that leadership is often measured not by what is claimed, but by what is protected, a thought that resonates deeply with Ethan. He acknowledges that learning curve, admitting that he has spent years equating control with responsibility, only recently understanding that trust can be a stronger foundation. There is no confession, no crossing of lines, only mutual recognition of growth, and the simplicity of it feels profound. As they return inside, Ethan delivers his closing remarks with clarity and humility, crediting the team, highlighting the purpose behind the initiative, and when applause fills the room, it feels earned rather than expected. At the end of the night, as guests depart and the venue quiets, Ethan thanks Lily for her work, for her insight, for her steadiness, and the gratitude is specific, sincere, unburdened by implication. Lily accepts it with the same grace she brings to everything, and as they part ways, Ethan understands that the transformation he feared has already occurred, not as a loss of control, but as an expansion of it, rooted in discernment rather than dominance. Driving home through the city streets, he reflects on how easily jealousy once disguised itself as vigilance, and how choosing respect has reshaped his sense of authority. He does not know what the future holds, and for the first time, he is comfortable with that uncertainty, confident that whatever comes next will be navigated with the same principles that have carried him here: honesty, restraint, and the quiet courage to let trust lead. Ethan expects the clarity he has found to carry him forward without resistance. But the following week introduces a quieter challenge that feels more personal than any boardroom pressure: Because clarity invites honesty, and honesty demands decisions he has postponed for too long. The company enters a strategic review period, one that will determine leadership restructuring for the next fiscal year, and Ethan is accustomed to approaching such moments with detachment, weighing talent and outcomes with precision. Yet when Lily's name appears on a shortlist for expanded responsibility, he pauses, aware of the dual lenses through which his judgment could be viewed. He spends hours reviewing performance metrics he already knows by heart, seeking confirmation that the respect he holds for her is earned on merit alone, and the data answers without hesitation. Her results are exceptional, her judgment trusted across departments, her influence quietly significant. Still, the awareness that others may question his objectivity unsettles him, not because of doubt in her ability, but because of the integrity he now values more deeply than optics. During a late afternoon discussion, he asks Lily to share her perspective on the proposed changes, framing the conversation as he would with any senior advisor, and she responds thoughtfully, focusing on team dynamics rather than personal advancement, emphasizing sustainability over speed, and her priorities reaffirm what he already knows, that her compass points outward, not inward. As they speak, Ethan recognizes a subtle shift in himself, the desire to be seen not just as a leader, but as a man capable of fairness even when it costs him comfort. When the conversation ends, he thanks her and takes the evening to consider his path forward, walking the city streets until the noise thins and his thoughts settle into something resembling resolve. The next day, he convenes a small executive group and presents the restructuring plan with transparency, crediting Lily's contributions openly, while also outlining safeguards to ensure accountability. And the room responds with respect rather than suspicion, the clarity of his approach diffusing what could have become rumor. Later, Lily seeks him out, not to celebrate, but to confirm expectations, her professionalism unwavering, and Ethan reassures her that standards remain unchanged, that opportunity does not exempt responsibility, and the exchange feels balanced, grounded, honest. As the days progress, he notices that the tension he once feared has been replaced by something steadier, a confidence rooted in alignment rather than avoidance. Yet there is still a conversation he knows he must have, one that has nothing to do with titles or roles and everything to do with boundaries and truth. He waits for the right moment, not to control timing but to respect it, understanding that pressure would undermine the very trust he has worked to build. When that moment comes, it is unremarkable on the surface, a quiet end to a long day, the office dimmed, the city humming below, and he speaks with care, acknowledging the shift he has experienced, the respect he holds, the commitment he has to maintaining professionalism above all else. He does not ask for anything, does not imply expectation. He simply names the reality that mutual regard exists and affirms his responsibility to ensure it never compromises her autonomy. Lily listens without interruption, her expression thoughtful rather than guarded, and when she responds, it is with appreciation for his honesty and reassurance that she values the same principles. That trust grows strongest where clarity lives. The conversation ends not with resolution but with understanding, and as they part ways, Ethan feels a quiet satisfaction that surprises him, because for the first time, he has confronted emotion without surrendering ethics. Driving home, he reflects on how jealousy once threatened to erode his judgment, and how confronting it directly has strengthened his leadership instead. He understands now that control was never about suppressing feeling but about choosing response, and in choosing integrity over impulse, he has reclaimed the authority he feared he was losing, an authority defined not by dominance, but by the courage to be accountable to himself and to others. Ethan notices that after the conversation they shared, the atmosphere between them does not retreat into formality nor drift into something undefined. Instead, it settles into a clarity that feels intentional, as if both of them have agreed, without saying so, to walk forward with awareness rather than assumption. The days that follow are steady, productive, and free of the tension that once colored his thoughts, and yet beneath that steadiness, something deeper is taking shape, a recognition that what he values most now is not the absence of feeling but the presence of alignment. Lily moves into her expanded responsibilities with the same discipline she has always shown, her confidence quiet, her focus outward, and Ethan makes a point of interacting with her in ways that mirror his interactions with other senior leaders, not to distance himself, but to honor the standards he has articulated. At the same time, he notices how trust has softened the edges of their exchanges, how humor appears naturally, how silence no longer carries weight, and he understands that respect, when mutual, creates its own intimacy without crossing lines. One afternoon, as they review outcomes from the restructuring, an external consultant questions whether Lily's influence has been understated in previous assessments, suggesting that her impact may have been greater than recognized, and Ethan listens carefully, allowing the discussion to unfold without defensiveness, confident that transparency will serve them better than control. When the meeting ends, Lily thanks him for the way he handled it, not as praise but as acknowledgement, and he replies that fairness should never feel like a favor, a statement he realizes he once might not have believed. As the quarter draws to a close, the pace slows just enough to allow reflection, and Ethan finds himself revisiting assumptions he built his career on, the belief that distance preserves authority, that emotion complicates leadership, that clarity requires separation, and each assumption now feels incomplete rather than wrong. He sees how jealousy once emerged from uncertainty, how his instinct to manage outcomes masked a fear of vulnerability, and how confronting that fear has expanded rather than diminished his capacity to lead. One evening, after most of the office has emptied, Lily stops by with a final update and hesitates, then shares that her brother's recovery is progressing, that stability is returning to her life in ways she did not expect, and Ethan listens with genuine relief, offering support that is present but not intrusive. The exchange feels like a marker, not of dependency but of shared humanity, and when she leaves, he sits alone for a moment, aware that there is still a decision forming within him, one that extends beyond policy or ethics into the realm of choice. Over the weekend, Ethan attends a small community event connected to the company's outreach work, and as he watches people engage with purpose rather than prestige, he understands that leadership is ultimately relational, defined by the trust others place in you when no one is watching. That realization clarifies what he has been circling for weeks, that honesty, when practiced consistently, creates space for connection that does not threaten integrity. When Monday arrives, he approaches the day with intention, prepared not to confess or to retreat, but to align action with truth, knowing that whatever comes next must be rooted in the same principles that have guided his recent growth. He does not rush, does not force a moment, but he recognizes that restraint is no longer about avoidance. It is about readiness, and he feels steady in the knowledge that when the time comes to take the next step, it will not be driven by jealousy or fear, but by respect, clarity, and the quiet confidence that comes from choosing authenticity over control. Ethan chooses a morning with no meetings to ask Lily to join him for a brief walk outside the building, not framed as a request for her time, but as a shared pause between responsibilities, and she agrees with the same calm assurance that has marked every step of their work together. The city greets them with steady movement and familiar noise, traffic flowing, pedestrians weaving purposefully, the river catching light in long bands. And as they walk, Ethan feels the absence of urgency that once governed him, replaced by a quiet certainty about what he needs to say and how to say it. He speaks plainly, acknowledging the arc of the past weeks, the way awareness replaced assumption, the way trust replaced control, and how that process clarified something essential for him. That leadership is strongest when it is honest and humane, not guarded by distance. He tells her that he values her integrity and her perspective, that he has learned from her steadiness, and that he wants to be clear about one thing. Whatever direction life takes beyond work will only be considered with her autonomy fully respected and with professional standards preserved without exception. Lily listens, attentive and thoughtful, and when she responds, her words are measured but warm, expressing appreciation for his transparency and confirming that the clarity they have built has allowed her to bring her best self to the work without hesitation or confusion. She shares that stability at home has returned, that the weight she carried has eased, and that she feels grounded in ways she did not expect, a statement that feels like a quiet gift rather than a revelation. They pause near the water, the wind light, the moment unremarkable to anyone else and deeply significant to them, because it marks a shared understanding that neither needs to rush nor retreat. Returning to the office, the day unfolds with familiar rhythm. Tasks completed, decisions made, trust reinforced through action rather than promise. And Ethan notices how his focus is sharper now, unburdened by the mental noise that once accompanied jealousy and fear. In the afternoon, he announces a new mentorship initiative designed to cultivate leadership across teams, crediting Lily for her insight in shaping it. And the recognition lands cleanly, without awkwardness or speculation, because it is anchored in merit and transparency. As weeks pass, the program gains momentum, morale strengthens, and Ethan's leadership feels lighter and more effective, guided by principles he once treated as abstract and now practices daily. One evening, after a long but successful day, Ethan and Lily find themselves leaving at the same time, the lobby quiet, the doors opening to a calm night, and there is no tension in the silence, only comfort. He thanks her again, not as a habit but as a genuine acknowledgement of shared growth, and she returns the thanks, noting that clarity has been a gift to them both. As they part ways, Ethan reflects on the moment that started it all, the reflex of jealousy that once threatened to narrow his vision, and recognizes how far he has come, not by suppressing feeling, but by understanding it. He knows now that control, when rooted in fear, constrains possibility, but when grounded in integrity, it creates space for trust to thrive. Driving home, the city unfolding ahead, Ethan feels settled, confident. Not because everything is defined, but because his values are, and that certainty carries him forward. The story does not end with a dramatic gesture or a sweeping declaration, but with something more enduring, a commitment to lead with respect, to choose honesty over impulse, and to allow connection to develop at a pace guided by trust, knowing that whatever comes next will be built on a foundation stronger than control, a foundation shaped by clarity, accountability, and the quiet courage to be authentic.